Hey everyone, this is Ian Craven coming to you as Writing Tips for Writers Facebook group and also Kaleidoscript magazine. We're Kaleidoscript, bridging fiction with reality. And over the course of my it- creating this Facebook group, I met different kinds of people who, they want to write, but they're struggling, right? They've got all kinds of things going on in their life, and I feel like there's a lot of imbalance there. And so that's led me to create a group specifically for people who are neurodivergent, like myself. Who I feel that a lot of the people I'm meeting are having those struggles because they have ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, or something similar. And so I want to introduce to you Rebekah. She's a certified life coach, and she did a tremendous job helping me the other year in reaching my goals. So, Rebekah, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Ian. So, as Ian said, I'm a certified trauma informed professional life coach, and I work with people on the neurodivergent spectrum that's autism, ADHD, ADD, and people who struggle with mental challenges to accomplish their goals regardless of their challenges. And yeah, working with Ian was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I love his brain and how just creative he is. He's so creative. And he's probably my most memorable client that I've
One of the
had.
first.
One of the first as well. So, yes, I learned a lot in my process from starting out life coaching with him and just really learned a lot about the neurodivergent brain and the variations that the neurodivergent brain has. But again, if you're here and you're watching this on the replay or live and you're not neurodivergent, I can go both directions. So yes.
Yeah. So I chose Rebekah before I even got to know her. Well, actually, she's recommended to me by Melissa, who's helping me with the magazine, and she's my co-founder and a best friend of both of ours. And so I had actually been talking with Melissa, and she's like, "You remind me of one of my friends." And so it was months later, if not sooner, I had met Rebekah. But I knew that this was a moment. If you've ever had a time in your life where you met that person and you just felt that connection with them, right? And you probably had different similar personality traits that you just clicked, right? And well, I already knew that about Rebekah, that I think she's like a little higher up on the spectrum than I am. That like, oh man, she's gonna, like, I don't know, like, because I was a broken person. I want to preference this by saying, I'm not here to bash my parents, but I did have a toxic relationship with my father growing up. Went through some verbal abuse, and as I've gone through just kind of exploring myself, I've become more aware of even the relationship with my mother, um, where I had a dysfunctional family, going through divorce, and so that was one side of my life that I really struggled with. My mom being, I guess, a warrior kind of mom. She's a single mother, and she did a fantastic job raising me and my brother and sister. And my dad, on the other hand, was very much absent, and even when he was with us, he wasn't around. So later on in my 20s, I experienced depression. I really struggled in my early 20s with like the orphan spirit, abandonment issues, rejection. So a whole host of things that really bottled up. And then when I was 25, I had depression. And so I had graduated, and so I'm a writer, right? And I haven't published yet, but I'm working on it. And um, there was like around the time when 2013, I was kind of wrapping up, getting done with college, and one of my best friends from college, he him and I are getting together. He's my writing partner. His name is Will, and so around that time, 2012 is when I started my story writing. And so between that given year, like 2012 in November, and for about a year, I guess, I'd I really poured my heart into writing a novel. So I got a rough draft of a novel. I wrote it less than a year, but Will was doing some illustrating for me, so we had a tremendous creative time. And this was also a time when I recognized myself as a writer. Like I'd always journaled but I didn't recognize myself as a storyteller. So I was wholehearted in this, right?
Hey,
And then
Ian,
around
you're cutting out a bit.
2014, I
I don't know
put
if you can see the stream, but you're
um
cutting out a bit. Your stream
oh
is a little
am
rough.
I okay?
Yeah.
All
So
right,
we're missing some
it's
of
okay
that.
for me.
So you were just started you said that,
Okay,
you were finding that you were a writer, really discovering that this is
okay, yeah,
something you
yeah.
love and you're good
So
at.
I'll say yeah. So like 2012 is when I discovered myself as a writer. Will, who I met in college, he was a real inspiration and became a best friend in supporting me. He's an English major, so I looked up to him. And so I poured my heart into writing this novel, which I wrote in like less than a year. But then I got to a point when I was overwriting the novel and just one idea after another, and so I took a step away from the novel, and I turned it into short story writing. And so I guess 2015, him and I were going back and forth, like 1 week at a time, and writing short stories. Like we kept, like I was just accelerating in my storytelling. Like I just decided, hey, I'm going to do the short stories, and we fed off of each other, you know. And so what happened though is I had unforgiveness in my heart towards my father, and even though I didn't ever want to be a bitter person, I'd become bitter towards my father, and that started to weigh really heavy on my heart, and it came to a place where I couldn't even write. I'm also poetic too. I write some poetry sometimes, and poetry has been a gateway for me to be able to release some of my deepest pain. Like for some reason, my poetry is dark, but I write fun stories. You know, I'm a kid in my storytelling, and then when I'm a poet, I'm dark. I'm like, what's that? Why? But um, and I think there's reasons behind that. But um, anyway, I'd been living in Georgia, and then I moved home knowing that I needed to forgive my father. And I'm thinking I'm going to tag probably a post to go into all the details, you know, like a whole story about me forgiving my father, what that entails, you know, after this. But yeah, so it's been a whole journey, you know. So I went through this whole narrative of forgiving my father, and well, the journey still wasn't over. Uh, so, you know, I guess I'll break it down into stages where, you know, I was forgiving myself, forgiving the church, forgiving my father. So I'd kind of been through like these different phases, different seasons of forgiveness. And then when Rebekah stepped into my life, it was like, oh, okay, I just knew it was like go time. So there might have been some things that needed healed, which God did. He had to pull some things out, you know, but um, I guess sometimes you need someone to prick it, you know, need to pop the bubble. And so when Rebekah entered my life, she did just that. And that was you know, it's like if you got a pail of water, right? Or if you're in a tub, right, you pull the plug, and the water is draining. And so you can imagine if there's all this toxicity inside my spirit, and then you pull the plug on my heart, and then all of it's coming out, right? So I feel like that's a great way to illustrate what Rebekah did for me, because sometimes we want to help our friends, and we can say a lot, but it's really the little thing that's, hey, that they know, like we know ourselves, right? We know we have a problem, and if we're willing to go through the process, that's when we actually heal.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely, and also I wanna add too with your story, which thank you for sharing that, it helps bring some context into this. A lot of times we can't see the things that are going on inside of us until we start addressing those things, and like therapy and counseling does, that goes more into the past of like really processing the emotions and the feelings, which is what you were kind of doing on your own on
yeah,
the side. But what I was noticing was how those things were blocking you from your forward movement of meeting the goals and the dreams that you had. You had these big visions, but you were really blocked in being able to execute them because of all the emotions and the feelings that were there. They were so big and in the front. And being able to help you remove those out of the way and say, like, okay, these are important, but we're not going to stay there. We're not going to live there in those things. We're going to look at the forward movement and really see what can happen from here moving forward. That's where coaching has become very powerful for you, because you could recognize what really was going on, what those blocks are, and then work through them in your own time, as well as with guidance from me to help you, like, hey, look at this, have you thought about that? Have you, and asking very specific questions to get your brain to think and unlock different parts of your brain. So these are things that are really powerful with life coaching, especially
Yeah.
understanding the trauma side of things, which I know you have some questions for me,
Oh yeah.
for all of that, which we'll get into.
Yeah. So I would say was really powerful too is, I'm a dreamer at heart. I mean, I feel like I'm a born dreamer. Like that's the way God wired me. But at the same time, like, okay, so I I heard something once that this goes into the whole positive and negative energy and male female energy thing, which I think it's, if you don't get too far off task, with that idea, I think there is some truth to it. So when I evaluated myself, I recognized my father wasn't present, but my mom was. And I heard one time that it's the mother, the way she nurtures allows a person to dream, but it's the father that nurtures the child to take action. So I'm like, oh, where's my father
Good
when
point.
where's that side of me that I need? And so that's really been my focus is like, oh, I'm the biggest dreamer because I not just by my mom. I've had lots of different women in my life that have influenced me, but I'm like, where are the men at that need to help,
Mm,
activate me? And
very good
and
point.
so
Yes.
with that, I know not everyone likes Jordan Peterson, but he really helped me to watch a lot of his videos. And something else that became valuable to me is there's a couple of different dating coaches just on YouTube that I followed. um, I should have wrote them down. I can list them or mention them later, um, but I really looked to them because I thought, man, if I even want to know what a man needs to be, I need to know what a woman is like. I need to know what she should be like. And we're kind of mixed up in our values these days and knowing those things. So those were some other tools or aids that really helped me. I did read, I'm not recalling the author, but I read the book last year, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that was such a great psychological narrative for me to be like, okay, so when a kid or when the young boy is grows up in this toxic environment, this is how he lives. And then I got a picture or like a perfect picture of myself, and I was like, oh, I see what I have to do now.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so that's really shaped me up to this point, and really, um, and it also like kind of like just being able to now have an awareness where, like the big picture stands out to me, and I see, okay, so the man needs to be like this. I need to do this, and so it's now I have more of an awareness of the direction I need to go personally. Um, and I got my whiteboard behind me, so I'm figuring out how to make those connections where it's like, all right, you got a dream, you got to put on the board, make your plans, and then you can take action. So I'm still learning to pace myself sometimes. But the truth is, I'm connecting with my dreams now, and some things have become a reality. I'm processing through those, and you got to give yourself some mercy and grace. That like even now,
Absolutely.
I,
Yes.
I'm learning to assess my energy and like when's a good time for me to to do my work, and when's the
Well,
downtime, when do I need to give myself a break so I can keep flowing in my
and
progress.
we have some questions that you had for me, some questions you wanted to ask me about
Yeah,
that. So I'll be sharing some tips on that
yeah,
in this broadcast. So are we ready for those questions? Do you want to go ahead and get into that? Because
yeah, sure,
we don't
we'll
want to
get to
keep
those.
everybody for
I,
too long.
I, right. I'll just note that when you're um working through with a life coach and working through those traumas and whatnot, can really help connect you more with your creative side. At least that's what it's done for me. So,
Hmm.
all right, I'll
Hmm.
leave you with that note, and then we'll get to these questions. So we have several questions. I'll just read them off here and let Rebekah, say whatever she'd like to say. Um, what made you feel called to life coaching, specifically in trauma-informed care of neurodivergence and people who may suspect they are on the spectrum?
So I actually was into tech support before I even got into life coaching. I was a tech support web designer. I worked with the Google Blogger platform, and I thought that's what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. I was full on into that. And then God redirected me and it was like, no, there's something about you personally that you don't even know about yourself. And this was in 2019 when he gave me this revelation that that I also am neurodivergent. Now, I had been diagnosed with chronic PTSD, which I didn't know, that was even a thing other than people who are in war. PTSD being post-traumatic stress disorder. And I didn't realize that that can happen with anyone who's experienced traumatic events. Mine were repeated over time, a long period of time, which may qualify for complex. I just think that they might have forgotten the complex part when they diagnosed me, because it makes more sense when I read the definition of that. But I also didn't know how to explain to a therapist what was going on with me to help them get the right diagnosis. So I knew there were some different things with verbal communication. I was having a hard time expressing my emotions, myself, my feelings. And I just knew I was so different that I didn't relate with everyone in the world that I mostly was surrounded by. So personally, I have a very personal story, which I can tell another time, that connected me to the understanding that trauma was in my life and that I was going to be living this journey of recovering from trauma, working on my trauma, and overcoming the obstacles that trauma brings in. So, yes, so in 2019, the Lord, I don't give him all the credit. He's the one who came to me and said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to work with other people who have trauma in their life, who are also neurodivergent, which was a brand new word I was learning at the time, and recognizing in myself as well. And also just being able to bring skills that I do have in other areas to help neurodivergent people and people who have just a hard time moving past feeling stuck, to get them to the goals that they're looking to get to. So.
Mhm. So, yeah, I didn't know about being neurodivergent until I met Rebekah either. So that was something, thankfully, meeting her, I was able to look into and understand more of myself and embrace it, and being able to, hone that, like, hey, these are the people that I connect with.
Right.
So something along that, so, education has a great way of educating us. We're just able to embrace it. Right? So, like, do
We're
you
losing
think
you there,
from a
Ian.
psychological or oh,
We're losing
you
you.
hear me?
So,
Okay.
yeah, you keep
Are
cutting
you
out a
still
little
losing
bit
me?
here and there. Yeah, so I just letting you know so that you don't go on a track and then we lose you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Yes.
Are we good?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. All right. So, would you say that in the field of being like a counselor, because psychology will discuss, the neurodivergent.
Mhm.
Do you think that they have an understanding of, like, I mean, they have a good understanding of it, but they don't have a way of embracing it? Like they struggle to kind of create those, um, I guess, those applicable, like, um, I well, like we know that there's like basic things that I think if you go to see a counselor, we know that there's steps that, things that we should do, that we can always be like kind of given a handout, like do these things, but
Mhm.
we kind of struggle to embrace the function of like how, like, okay, oh, you're neurodivergent, so do this, opposed to doing what, the um
Mm. Mhm.
what do we call it? Neurotypical, right? So
Right,
it's
right.
like it's kind of trying to divide it up into two different categories, right? If you're hands-on or if you're more audio learner, right? So it's like you're not gonna. So
So to answer that question, I think that there is more research being done. I think people are in the medical fields and professional fields are getting better at this. I think they're starting to really catch on that our brains work differently. They process things
mhm.
differently, and we're not going to necessarily um, be helped in a way that's supposed to happen with the clinical uh, resources and
Well,
tools that are within that without having the piece of understanding of neurodivergence in general. So yes, so I think that we're working on it in the medical field. I think it can always get better, it can always improve. And I try to fill in those gaps and help people
yeah.
connect also to the right counselors, therapists, and professionals that they need to be working with.
Mhm.
That will hear them, see them, and understand them. That's a huge part of my coaching. It's a different aspect of coaching. And again, the questions I definitely will touch on some of that in there because I
Oh,
did
okay.
mention like how I'm different as a life coach than maybe some
Mhm.
other life coaches out there and with the neurodivergent side. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Did you have any other
Um,
questions? By the way, I'm
yeah. So
doing this
we're using
intentionally
the word.
because I know Ian, and Ian with the ADHD side of him, he can get off tangent really fast, and we both know this. So I'm helping. This is my demonstration right now of how I help someone keep on focus on
Okay.
task. There you go.
Yeah, I get the hints. Okay, so
And much
well, we're
love,
using
dear. Much love.
yeah, we're using
Yes.
we're using the word neurodivergent, and I identify ADHD,
Mhm.
dyslexia, and those kinds. But what is it exactly? How would you define it?
So it is a mixture, okay? Again, these words, these terminologies, they're changing, they're morphing all the time. There used to be the word neurodiverse that you might have seen. You may have seen Asperger's, and now we are changing all of that in the medical industry. And so, the best way to describe it is someone who processes differently, struggles maybe some with social cues and things like that. And it can encompass people with ADHD, ADD, autism, people whose brains just work differently than a neurotypical brain that works a little faster, that works a little bit more methodically. So we need that structure because we tend to be more like boom, 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 like everywhere, trying to
Yeah,
solve all the problems and get really involved in all the details of things. So layman's terms, I guess, is a good way to put that, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, for me, I see myself as a conceptual thinker. You might say I'm a big picture thinker, and where other
Mhm.
people, they think step by step. So if it comes to story writing, it's like, hey, I got an idea, but then
Yeah.
I,
Well, and the
you know,
spectrum is broad too. So you can have a lot of different pieces and parts on the spectrum and be different on the spectrum as well. So you could
well, yeah,
have your
yeah,
big thinkers and you could have your very type, details, but you also are detailed. So it's kind of interesting because
yeah,
you're a
yeah.
mixture
Well,
there.
that's kind of interesting to me because like I find that I'm detailed, but then like it's like if it's a job description, like detailed, and then it's like, yeah, like
Right.
I'm detailed, but I'll miss some things,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
All
that's
right.
why I struggle. Like I see the big picture and then I'm detailed, but then I'm still missing things, and that's where I need someone else who's
For
probably
structure. Mhm.
the neurotypical that's gonna like, okay, ask these questions, and uh, um
Yes, and
I don't know. I mean, but
to bring a point to that, Ian, that's really important is that, I had to learn these things that I now teach. I used to not
Uh-huh.
naturally be that way. I was not very structured. I was kind of the messy kid. I had my stuff everywhere. I was comfortable in environments of messy and clutter and, not knowing what's going on and what's happening because it was more exciting that way. Um, but then I learned later in the school years that there's no way I can function like this, and that's the key, function. How are you functioning?
Mm,
Um, so if
mm.
that helps. Do you have another
Yeah,
question for
I would
me?
think yeah, if you taken a weekly assessment of yourself, you ask yourself at the end of the week, "How am I functioning? What and
Yes,
then
how
what
am
did
I
you
functioning?
accomplish in that function,
Right,
right?"
exactly.
Um, alright, so, what drives you to want to help people get results in their life?
So, I know how much I struggled personally with a lot of these things that I now teach and work with in coaching.
Mhm,
Um, So I had to find solutions first. I had to find ways to navigate the crazy world out there that is confusing as all get out for us. And again, even if you're not neurodivergent and you're listening to this, I'm sure you're coming across all kinds of crazy right now that's going on in the world. And you're trying to navigate it and you're trying to figure it all out. So I think this can apply to everyone who is just wrestling right now with a lot of stress and burnout.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, I have a drive to see people be able to function better, to overcome these challenges, and you don't have to be, stuck where you're at. That's the thing, you don't have to, and when I see people thinking that that's all they're going to ever be, and they say that to me, like, "This is how I always am, this is how I always was," I'm like, "No, no, no, no." There's so much more out there for you, even if it's within limitations, even if there are limitations with disability or something like that, you still have a perfect designed creator that created you to to do certain things in your life. You weren't just put on this earth to be flailing and trying to be like, well, why am I here, and asking
mhm,
those why questions all the time. There is answers to those why questions. There's answers that we can find, and there's a lot of life to live and discover. And I love that part of coaching is that I'm helping my clients discover and think outside of those boxes that they've placed themselves in. Um, yeah.
yeah, I think with that, I mean, with me personally, I would guess I would speak to the audience too to say that, whatever you're going through, um, well, we shouldn't define ourselves based on our conditions or the struggles we're going through, like, God can have a deeper purpose, so, like, he can there's an explanation that he has, and in the
Mhm.
testimony he's building out of that, that he's made in your life, that he has a plan, and yeah, there's things that we don't understand in life, which I've been dealing with too, and um, but God was reminding me just not too long ago, well, actually showing me, not so much of a reminder, but He was revealing to me, showing me that it's about the journey, um, and
Mhm.
that relationship that He wants, and going through that process. And so, um, you know, you're at point A, and you're like, oh, I'm like this, but then you press on to point B to for the testimony of who He is and what He's going to do in spite of that struggle, because it's like at the end of the day, at the end of your life, it's like, well, I am the Lord. Like that's his testimony that he brought you through
Amen.
something in spite of. And I
Mhm.
never imagined myself being an author. Well, I mean, I'm going to be one. I'm in the process. I'm getting there.
You're gonna
So,
get there, you're gonna
but
get there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm looking for the illustrators, and I think I've got some in mind. I just got to put my books into motion. So,
The thing is, Ian, the thing to remember, especially for people just like you out there who are having a hard time
mhm,
focusing on what it is that they're supposed to be doing, right? You have accomplished a lot. I mean, even having this Writing Tips for Writers group of 8,000 people, starting this Kaleidoscript magazine, we gotta remember that we have to celebrate those victories that we have had along the way and not forget the things that got us to where we are now, like, to see that path behind you. That
Mhm.
is important. And I remind my clients that all the time is like, wait a minute. When they're like, oh, haven't really accomplished much this year. I'm like, well, do I need to read my notes off to you of everything you have accomplished? And then we
Yeah.
just go through it and I just start reading, "Okay, you did this, you discovered this about yourself, you wrote," and then they're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize all of that." Because a lot of times we're looking at tomorrow and we're going, "Okay, I need to prepare for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing." And we're not looking at behind us and going, "Oh, wow, I did that, I did that, I did that." You know, that is equally important, to
Mhm.
celebrate the victories along the way that you've made. Um, do you have another question for me?
Oh, sure, yeah. Let's see. Is it true that you have 2 branches of entrepreneurship, the Lady Gadget, and Scripture Prescription Ministries?
Yes, I do. The Lady Gadget is my tech and business solutions. So a lot of the problem solving around businesses and the things that entrepreneurs run into. And then tech support, which is pretty much anything. I mean, just the tech is an overall word, but I help with things with computers, with websites, just problem solving, a lot of that. Someone brings me a problem, "Do you know how to do this?" "Well, no, I don't, but I absolutely can figure it out." That's usually how I answer, if there's something I don't know. But that's how my brain works. That's part of my neurodivergent brain. It's a puzzle, solving brain. So I'm seeing solutions really fast on
Uh,
things, and I made a whole business around that. And then Scripture Prescriptions Ministries, that is my coaching side, but I also work, on the road with ministry as well, helping people in person with different things that they're having problems with. Sometimes it's connecting um, with the government, with professionals, trying to figure out and solve problems there, which we know government stuff is a blast to work with. I've helped people navigate the healthcare system, navigate, veterans system, and all of that as well. So yeah, so there's different branches of different things. This is part of my brain splitting into two and to totally different hemispheres here.
yeah, yeah, so do you do both at the same time, or you switch off into different seasons when you help in those areas?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I pray and I ask the Lord, "What do you want me to do today? What do you want me who do you want me to help today? What's gonna be the focus this month?" That's what I do. I've been doing that for years, and he will
Mm,
bring a client on one side, and then he'll bring a client on the other, and I will be doing both simultaneously
mm.
and have them both booked on both
Oh,
sides.
okay.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
flexibility, I wouldn't say that a standard entrepreneur should do that because you can get really
Oh, yeah.
divided, like, on what you're gonna focus on, but for the kind of life that
Well,
I live, it fits.
right. Well, yeah, I think specifically for us types that are neurodivergent, like I recently heard, well, someone told me that, you can do up to 3 things, but once you get past the 3, then it's too much. So,
Yes.
some of us can be wired to do more than one thing, which like myself, like with my writing and different projects, I'm thinking I work best doing rotating my schedule maybe week to week, so because I want to do so much.
Mhm.
And then that can help stimulate like just the passion, like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, because it's a collaboration of things going on around in my head that I want
Well,
to
and you have to
accomplish.
be
And
careful with multitasking.
I know that
We'll
you
get
have
to
to be
that.
careful.
We'll get to that in one of those questions because I do wanna give a tip
So,
on that, because we think
okay.
multitasking is a great thing, but, I got something to say about
Well,
that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, preferably, I mean, when it comes to actually accomplishing, it's like, all right, start out with one. You got to establish one pillar, then the next. But you still have to be careful because I would say like one is like your minor, and then the other one's your major project. A minor project, major project, because you can't
Yeah,
really.
there's a lot of different ways
Anyway,
to go about it, but I do have a way that
um, let's
I teach.
let's see. Okay, so then what is the story behind these 2 brand names, and how do you serve your clients in each one? Which you've already kinda touched on that, but,
Yeah, I pretty much touched on that. Yeah.
okay, alright. Um, what kind of help and support can you provide a person who wants to get, started writing, but is struggling to focus, and be organized regardless if they are neurodivergent or not?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I would say that one of the top things that I see writers do, or anybody who's trying to accomplish a project, is there is way too much stuck in the research stage.
Oh,
Because
really?
yes, we are natural researchers for our writing. We wanna make sure we're accurate with what we say and all of that, and that's great, and that's good. But when we're note takers and we're researchers and we're constantly, gathering information, I am guilty. I'm raising my hand on that because I'm guilty. I've done
Mhm,
it. We can get very stuck there and we don't actually move past the research stage or the note taking stage and get the project done. So there's been times in which I've written something out and I'm like, okay, it's great. It's ready to go. Let's publish this, and then I'm like, darn, I probably should have
oh,
done more research on this, and this. And you can get stuck in that, especially when you're trying to be accurate
mm,
or, correct for those of us who are like that, maybe perfectionists out there that are like, oh, I can't publish it yet because if I get something wrong and then it comes, well, guess what? Things are going to come back and bite you regardless. Someone's always going to have an opinion about what you wrote. So one of the best ways to handle that is do your diligent research, right? Your note taking, but then have a stopping point, whether that is like, okay, I'm only going to research this topic for 1 week, right? Just as a hypothetical. And I'm not going to continue researching past that point, right? You're giving yourself a parameter to help you stay within that parameter and then move forward with the project to get that thing published.
mm,
The same thing happens with our books. It happens with, publications for articles. I've done it again. I've done it myself. I've run into this before. And that's why I'm saying it because I see this is one of the number one things that people do. And there is ways to kind of work within those parameters to really get you to that goal, which I do in coaching. I will walk you through like what is the areas that you're getting stuck in? What are you feeling about the thing that you're writing about? That kind of a side of things with the productivity side. Um, but yeah, a lot of people, a lot of writers and project people trying to move their projects forward are running into this problem and then not getting stuff done. And then they're like, oh, I never got my novel out yet. I never got my, my manuscript out yet. Couldn't write those articles, because I still have these things that need to be researched. And, we just get into this cycle and then we don't do anything at all.
mm.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a little different. I mean, I'm a big researcher, and
Hmm.
I do tend to. I mean, there's those critical areas. Like to me, research is like okay. I mean, the gist of it is me. I write the story first, and then it's like if I'm doing research. Like I would say there was a story I wrote recently, and then I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't understand. Like, well, what's the magic system, or what is this and that? And then I'm like, I got to do some research to actually make sense of this. Like how does this work? How do I put the story together? Because that is a critical part. And but for
And
the most part,
it can
I
reverse too, like what you're saying. That can reverse as well. You can get really caught up in the story and then, the research is
yeah,
like you
yeah,
said, the
yeah. See, I
research
get caught
is
up in
left
the
out.
story, and and the
But
story's not
yeah.
done until I feel like it feels complete, like it feels done. And I
Yeah.
admit to being the perfectionist kind, but I heard there's no such thing as perfectionist, only excellence.
Well, I can tell you that perfectionism can definitely be a huge hindrance to productivity. It
Okay,
can.
okay. Well,
Yes.
it's held me back a little, but I'm getting over myself. That's why I'm becoming a publisher or becoming
You
an author,
you're you're
and
working on it.
and I
You're
figure by
working on it.
after that I'll be a publisher because I understand the process.
Yes.
But but yeah, I get caught up in all that. It's because I spit out the stories and but it's like okay, yeah. So research is a great way to knit your story together, but anything could become a hindrance.
Yes, both ways,
Um,
both directions, yes.
yeah. Um, let's see. What challenges have you faced personally when meeting goals of your own?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I think that some of my most difficult challenges and obstacles have been confidence. Believe it or not, having confidence in what I'm writing and what I'm putting out there. Um, Fear of criticism is a big one. Like, what if they don't like it? What if somebody says something about it? What if this gets me sued? You know, like
Uh,
questions like that. Because,
I think what
there's
gets you sued is a bigger issue than
well,
I.
we with the climate we have going on right now, a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are very highly opinionated. And so, I'm sure all of us have done it. We have all looked at something, read a
Mhm,
piece and said, "Oh, I would not have written that. I wouldn't have said that about it." So we can be very critical ourselves, hypercritical ourselves. And I've had to get past those fears to start putting my stuff out there in the last 5 years,
mhm,
because I was writing a blog a while back, but it was just like a family blog. It wasn't anything, really kind of grabbing attention, um, and people enjoyed it, they enjoyed reading it, but then I was like, "Ugh, I don't just wanna write about my life all every week," I wanna actually put something
mhm,
out that's meaningful. And then when I published in Letters of Love, for example, Melissa DeVoe's
mhm,
published book, the anthology Letters of Love, those 2 letters were one of the most vulnerable pieces of writing that I had written to an audience for the first time, a public audience, and that took a lot of guts for me. Uh, I'm an introvert naturally, and sharing my thoughts with the world is always been something I'm kinda cringe and I go, "Oh, should I write this?
Oh, yeah?
Should I say this?" Yeah, so I've had to get past that. I've had to get
Yeah,
past that as an introvert, and I'm sure there's introverts gonna be listening to this as well, that, is it okay to share this? Is it okay? Do I feel comfortable sharing these types of details about my life or things? Because it was an intimate place. It was an intimate letter that I wrote, to my husband, who's now my ex, and that
mhm,
was very difficult to,
yeah.
um, to handle, and I actually just said that publicly, so people who know me, yeah, I'm divorced. I just realized that I just put that out there. So so yeah, that is something that I struggled with the most. And then I think the other thing is time. Um, Always saying I just don't have time.
Mhm.
I don't have time to put this out. I don't have time to write this piece. And that's something else I could go into, and I'm
Oh,
probably going to with another
yeah, that goes
question.
into organization
Yes.
of what we're after. Because I heard, like, if you wanna get something done, make a deadline. Like, otherwise you just keep going on the back burner.
And that can be good and detrimental at the same time. So we'll get into that
Yeah,
in one of the other questions that
okay,
we
okay.
have.
Um, let's see, you were just mentioning yeah, about, being criticized. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask then. So, uh, I kinda think there needs to be a balance of both, but when you write, do you write for yourself or do you write for the audience? See which one. It's a
That's
little of
a
both, right?
great question. We're supposed to write for the audience. We are. That is a very interesting thing you mentioned, because that is something I have been working on right now. It's very easy to have my own, especially as a neurodivergent person, to be kind of more introspective. Um, and have my own opinions, my own thoughts, my own views on things, right? And I can throw that out there if I believe this and this is what I think and blah blah blah. But then if it's not resonating with anybody, well, then nobody's going to read it, right? But
Mhm.
if I'm talking to the audience, I'm speaking to the audience that I know I'm working with. Well, then those tend to always be a lot more grabbing, and people tend to share them more. And it's admittedly, I'm working on that as a writer myself. I'm working on developing that a little bit more and trying to figure out what that means as a neurodivergent person who sees things differently, who can kind of
Mhm.
see behind the scenes and not just the front facing surface
Oh,
of a person.
so
Does that make
so
sense?
so do you think do you think when you're writing because you do see differently than a lot of people, you have to be mindful of, like, are they gonna understand this the way I'm understanding it as I write?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is
yeah.
one of the biggest things, because then that can lead to miscommunication, and
Yeah.
boy, have I had enough of those. in my
Yeah, no,
lifetime.
no, no.
Or
Something else
been
pertaining to
misunderstood.
yeah, another thing pertaining to writing, like I'm working with a book coach, right? Now I live up north, but my book coach lives down south.
Mhm.
And I was working on one of my stories, and I'm not recalling what the word was, but I remember calling the story. But I used a word, and she thought differently about that. To me, it was like, but like it was everything, everyday thing, like terminology. So
Right.
even if you're regionally like in the same state, I mean, like your same country, I mean, you need to be mindful of I mean, it could be very cliche or something, or a certain kind of saying that that just things that are said. You know, we have to be mindful of the context and what that means to a reader. Because so like
Yes.
regionally, like it might make sense for the locals, but then you send it out across the California, and then it's like, well, they didn't get that.
Yes, and that's where
So that's just
again,
something that like that
I just have to write what's on my
caught me
heart
off guard a
and
little bit.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I just write what's on my
But
heart. I write what's on my heart, I
mhm,
write what's going on, in a relatable sense of, like, I feel like when I write, the people who are to, um, respond to my writing or, what's the word? The people who will be attracted to my writing or any of our writing is gonna be that perfect audience for us, right? We're gonna
mhm,
figure that out along the way, like, as people are signing up and be getting interested, and that's one of the things that
uh-huh,
I get a lot of neurodivergents follow me. A lot of
mhm.
autistic people, neurodivergents follow me, but not always just them. It can also be others who are just creative in how they think, or kind of like,
Mhm.
"I'm all over the place. I just, I don't really know what's going on inside of me. I feel like I'm different, but I don't really have any definition for it yet." So you could be
Well
neurodivergent and you don't even know it.
I
That can
also
happen
think that
too.
people need to see, uh, the need for I mean, if they're not neurodivergent, they need to see the need to be able to collaborate with that community and how they can partner instead of creating us like we're our own little tribe over here with, we partner and do our own thing. No, that's not how it
I agree.
works,
We
you
have a
know?
lot to offer. Yeah, we have a lot of really amazing talent in this community to offer. So,
So
yes,
yeah,
I agree.
so one of the things that just to highlight, and then we'll go to next question is I would say write for yourself, be mindful of your audience because like especially if you're writing romance or it's a horror story, you got to think sometimes, oh, if I put that in there, if you're halfway through your book, is that going to turn my audience off and they just stop reading it? So if you're writing for yourself, you're saying true and authentic to yourself, and also you're connecting like you're going to connect with your audience regardless. Like if I mean if because if you write for them, it's like, well, then are you writing from your brand, from who you are, and so it's kind of a mix of
It's a
both, right?
delicate
Because it's
balance.
like
It's a dance.
yeah, the balance, a delicate balance, a dance,
Yes.
right? So let's see. So we're um what challenge? Okay, so how do you work through writer's block? Or do you have it? I don't typically have I think I
Ah,
had it in the beginning. I used to have it more
y
often, but I
yeah.
think it's easier to, like, kinda just jump into it. You don't have it as much really, once you kinda
No,
learn to
I
write,
definitely have writer's
you
block.
do you?
No, yeah,
Okay,
a lot of
okay.
us do. You don't seem to
Oh,
have it.
yeah,
You
yeah.
seem to be able
Well,
to write whatever you want, and it's one of the things that I think is a
yeah.
gift from you for you, like, specifically, because
Oh,
a
well
lot of us go through it. But this is my question,
okay, so
right?
yeah, it's yours. It's your question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Again, keeping you on track, Ian, keeping you on track.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, yes, writer's block. Alright. So, I think we all experience it at some point in time. Um, and a lot of it, again, I think is connected to whatever's going on with us internally. I think that a lot of times, if there's something that we are trying to process and we want to write something about it, but it's just not coming out right, it's not coming out well, I write anyway. That's what my
Mm,
advice is write anyway. Even if it comes out and it makes no sense. There's something that I do as a regular exercise, and that is to just write a bunch of nonsense on a notepad on, like, my iPhone notes, and
mhm,
doesn't have to make any sense. The sentences don't have to be perfect. They don't have to run together and sound good, and then I'll start to notice there's a creative flow that starts to come from that, as I get more into it, and I almost like I'm unloading my brain, offloading whatever is there on the
mhm.
surface, then the good stuff starts to come underneath, and then I'm like, "Ooh, that's good. I could put that in my book. I
Yeah,
could,"
yeah,
so
yeah,
I that's how I work one of the tips, one of the ways that I work through writer's block.
yeah. I know, my friend Will, he's like, I have been there sometimes. And
Mhm.
well, there's been times, see, I get an idea, and I'll call Will up, and then he'll give me start to storyboard it for me, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, okay, I got it." But then also sometimes, see, even as well, you hope to be an author someday, and, um well, what genre are you going to write? You're not made to write every genre necessarily, and other genres may be a certain struggle for you. And not that you can't learn to write them, but there's certain ideas that I have that I'm like, oh. And Will and I, we worked together creatively for a number of years. So like, I'm like, I think this is a story for you, Will. Like, how about you write it? And I can, pass my ideas off to him. And I think that's where collaboration becomes really strong. But I really, I was, like, here's the thing is you're supposed to discipline yourself to write what for an hour, 1,000 words a day. And, me, I just can't sit there for an hour and write. Like, if I'm going to write, I got to sit there and it's like, I
Yeah.
gotta, I, I mean, sometimes I could
Sometimes
sit there for an hour and
sometimes
have a
too
blank
much
page. Other times it just it spills out.
yeah.
And other times
Sometimes
it's
too
like,
much
okay, well, I don't know what to
structure
write, but I need to
can be
yeah. And,
detrimental.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just need to let it flow out on the page though. Like even if it's not the story, like Rebecca was saying, just that's the surface, all the stuff, and then you actually get to the good stuff. It's like you're connect
Mhm.
deeper. So,
Mhm.
and I think that's what people need to recognize is, yeah, get all the stuff off your mind, and then you'll meet that sweet spot.
And taking the time, a lot of times we give up as soon as we start feeling like, "I don't wanna write. I can't write. I don't want," and we start saying those
Yeah,
things so
well,
negatively towards us, and that's the thing, and, like, this is one of the things I see all the time with writers is they will do this, right? This is what they'll do. They'll say, I can't think of anything to write. I don't wanna write. I'm just you know what? I'll just put it aside and I'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll do it later, and then it just gets again, that productivity side, staying on topic here, that productivity side is very, hampered because you're not really getting anything done. You're just letting
mhm,
those emotional blocks and those mental blocks get in the way, and then you're not accomplishing anything. You're not moving anything forward, even if it's just a little bit each day at a time. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's a
Well,
big
well,
deal.
yeah. A key way to be creative too is you got to be playful, and playful is the opposite of having trauma. So like you got to be playful. And
Mhm.
so one way, some ideas have come to me, whether I'm on a run, go for a walk, or I'm just doing whatever. I'm doing dishes, and my brain is swimming though. I'm thinking this stuff. All of a sudden, it pops in my head. I'm like, I gotta finish the dishes. I gotta go write it down.
Yes, yes, you like I said, you're very
But yeah,
creative and a
that's
visionary.
what I say. Put a pad by your bedside, okay? But let's see. Uh, how do you get published in Shout Out Atlanta and chosen to write for Brains magazine?
Yes, so
I'll go to the next part once you.
this is something very recent, that came up. So, funny thing is, I had a life coach myself that is no longer life coaching, but she was awesome about helping me unpack the things that were going on in my brain that was blocking me from moving forward as well, was doing the same thing I do with others, but for a specific purpose, and reason that I was going to her for. And she actually recommended me to be interviewed in Shout Out Atlanta after she was interviewed. She said that she thinks that I need to be published in this for an interview because she got a lot out of the sessions herself.
Mm,
She was she was coaching me, but I ended up kind of counter coaching her because I was recognizing things that were holding her back in her own coaching journey as, a coach herself. So that was something that just was naturally happening because I'd be like, wait a minute, like, this is going on and you're feeling this way about this, but here's a different way to maybe look at it. Have you thought about, and then it ended up reversing, and she's like, you're actually a really good coach. Like, you need to stay on this track because it's helping unlock things with me, and I'm supposed to be your coach.
Mm,
And that was happening a lot with a lot of people, actually.
mm,
When I realized that
mm,
this is what I should pursue. And that God had
mm,
innately put this inside of me. But yeah, Shout Out Atlanta reached out to me sometime last year, and I answered their interview questions, and the interview questions that they wanted to publish. But then I republished this. I actually had them update the article this year. So this summer, it just went out. So you can find that on my website under my press tab. There's like a little articles and press tab that you can find that article at. And yeah, that was my first published interview. And then Brains Magazine was also a godsend. They just found me randomly. They were searching for a specific
mm,
type of niche of life coach, and my stuff apparently came up in Google, and they messaged me and they said, we want you to be an executive contributing writer. We read some of your stuff. We were looking online and checking all your stuff out, and we really like what you do. We want to support you in this. So yeah, so I'm working on Brains Magazine articles now to get published out there. There's probably going to be like 5 in a row. I'm going to be like, sorry guys, this is just how I write. I'm just going to throw 5 in a row because I'll be in a creative flow, and then I'll write them all
yeah.
in 2 or 3 months.
So yeah, well, before I go to the next part about this, talking about Kaleidoscope magazine, what I mean, to me, it looks like you've really, really excelled from. Let's see, we met in 2020, or
Mm,
it was at the
yeah,
end, right? So
yeah, about
2020. So we
2020.
got started
Hmm.
in 21, and so to look at what now, like don't you think that that's a big acceleration, especially. I know we've had some conversations where you're like, "Oh, I can't write," or I mean, you can, but you don't write like you wish or whatever, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, look, now you're in this position where you're writing, and getting more recognition, So, like, have you seen yourself evolve from since then, since that point, since we first met? Have you seen yourself evolve as a writer, and what's that been like?
You know what? I used to write a lot when I was a child. I would write fiction stories and things like that, and then I ended up having a tragic, traumatic event that happened, where I lost every single piece of writing I had ever written on my computer through a thunderstorm, a lightning storm. It was very traumatic. I lost everything. My hard drive totally fried, and I didn't write for many, many years. All throughout my teenage life, I stopped writing. And then I started writing again in nonfiction way with the blog. Um, and I was just talking about, we did this week, and we went here that week, just kind of basic stuff. And then um, went through another series of traumatic events in my life personally, which then created a difference in my writing. My writing, I think, has grown to be more honest, authentic, more like, real. It's not just, oh, I'm just writing for the sake of writing, but actually really
Mm,
like heart deep, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
I think
real,
what you're
authentic.
yeah, I think I know what I had a similar experience in college. I'd been writing for a while, and I hadn't claimed myself to be a writer, but I just met Will, and he was helping me write one of my it was a journal for English. And
Mm.
see, now I really struggled with sequencing my work. Now everyone that reads my stuff, and I write real fast, is like, oh, you did that, and 1,000 words a day. Like, okay, I do. get off this live and write a 1,000-word story. It's like, oh, there's a nice rough draft. Well, that wasn't always so. I couldn't do that. I would be first paragraph. Now let's look at the fourth paragraph. The first paragraph and the second, or in the fourth paragraph connect, but the paragraphs in the middle, no. It's like, what are those? Get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Will was really helped me with sequencing, but it was these ideas. Like I'm what was it? I'm a I process my environment outwardly, right? So it helps
Mhm.
me to talk to myself and that kind of thing, right? So, well, what was going on in that moment was I was having my thoughts, and Will was repeating my ideas in relationship to his own ideas, and I was just thinking and listening to him. I was like, oh, I got it, and I was writing, but it was in that moment, which was like a sweet moment for me, because it was like, oh, I understand what writing is about. Like, this is the power. Like, this is what it means, and it's not just, oh, I have to write my academic paper, or I need
Right, to not see it
to
as like a
finish my
chore.
homework. It
Yeah.
yeah, it's not just it, for me, I've realized for myself personally that writing isn't something I just get to do for fun and I get to enjoy it. It's about a message that I'm sending, whether it's fiction or nonfiction,
I was just gonna
and
say the
how I'm able to
message.
deliver that to
Yeah,
create the transformation in people's life. And
exactly. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's what I
So
feel like has happened with my writing, is that my writing is becoming more purposeful,
yeah,
more
yeah.
genuine, authentic, purposeful. It has purpose. It's not just, okay, I'm going to write just for the sake of writing, just because I'm supposed to be a writer, which a lot of us can look at it that way. But more of
Mhm,
like, what do I want to say to my audiences? What do I want to say to my followers? How do I want to encourage them? How do I want to inspire the people who are coming across my writing? I don't want my writing just to be something they see and they scroll by. Um,
mhm.
because there is really great writers out there, incredible writers. Sometimes I go, "Oh my gosh, if only I could write like that," I do that, and and then I go, "No, no, 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 don't do that," because then if you're comparing your writing to someone else's and their journey that they've had, well, then it's not authentic. You're just copying what someone else is
Mhm.
saying, right? And a lot of people write that
Yeah.
style. They'll have that style, and they'll be like admiring that style, but then it's not authentic to them when they try to go and copy it. And it doesn't work, right? Because
Mhm,
it needs to be from your heart and your soul and your inner being. Writing is so personal to us. And it is our expression. For me, it's an expression of my faith. It's an expression of my emotions and the things that I've been through, the things I can connect with others that have been through similar struggles like grief and sorrow, trauma, pain, right? Like being able to connect with that and
mhm,
say, I see you. I know that maybe you're trying to be all happy today and positive today, but maybe today is not that day to feel that way. Maybe you need to sit with them, with those emotions a bit, and really process
mhm,
them out, and give yourself permission to grieve, give yourself permission to feel
mhm,
those emotions, so your writing can be more powerful when it does come out. Does that make sense? Because that's what's happening
mhm.
to me right
Yeah.
now. Is
Well
I think the
well,
books I write are gonna be really powerful, because it's like I've been through something and I've
yeah,
experienced it, not just seen it, read about it, but experienced it, and experience is some of the best teaching that you can
yeah.
give
Well
yourself.
well, and I come across a lot of people who, like being happy is a choice, and, be positive and all that, and, um, like have to have this high energy and stuff, and
Mhm,
it's like, Um, I think the best way to be authentic is, like you're saying, like sit with your emotions. Like, I don't like, if I wake up and I'm sad or I'm in distress or whatever, it's like I don't need to choose to be happy. I might need to choose to praise God, but like I
mhm,
need like, okay, well, that's fine. That's a good spot for you. That if you're depressed, fine, sit there, feel that,
mhm,
because you don't like, why are we gonna make this a happy day when it's not? Sit there, go through it,
mhm.
and because otherwise you'll pay for it, going forward in your life. We're like, oh yeah, I stuffed that down. It was a happy day, and back then, and now
Very
it's,
true.
well, and it blows up in your life again, right? And then also, I think one of the ways we can highlight the strength of this, well, of this interview is that writing is therapeutic, right? So
Oh, yes.
yeah,
I've done a
yeah.
lot well, I've
So
done a lot of songwriting of things I would never put out there.
um,
My rawness, I call it. My raw
yeah.
writing.
So hey, what can we expect you to be writing a nonfiction then, or fiction? You're writing nonfiction. Can we expect you to
Not
be writing fiction?
nonfiction, yeah, the books that I'm working on is gonna be nonfiction, and it's gonna be about a lot of different themes, the things that I've been going through in my life that have helped me understand God more, helped me
Mhm,
understand more clarity on who He really is, and not just what people say He is and who people say He
mhm,
is, but what the Word says and what my experience with Him has been.
mhm.
There's a lot coming. I know
Yeah.
I'm bits and pieces right now, just kind of piecing things together, lessons I've learned along the way in my short 36 years of life right now.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm 36. I'm gonna be 36 in September. So it's a shorter life than a lot of people at my age, may
Mm,
have experienced because I've been through, like, insane amounts of trauma, like, crazy amounts of things that you would normally see over a longer lifetime. But the Lord has just kind of, I think, fast tracked me. Like, hey, I need you to go through all of
yeah,
these things in 5 years and then write about it. Right?
yeah.
Like,
And you think
yeah,
like I think that's like almost like I won't call it a purpose, but I mean I was gonna say like a stamp
that's a
of purpose, but
calling.
it's like it's a
Yeah,
well, like I had a friend in college who, she's going through a lot herself. I mean, old enough to be my mom. And
right.
as I recall, it's like she didn't understand why she's going through what she's going through. But then later, looking back, she's like, it was so I could carry the burdens of others, so I could
Amen.
minister that. And she's in the counseling department. So yeah, so I guess we should move on to another question. Is for as
Yes,
great as
we are at an
question that
hour
was.
and 6
Yeah,
seconds or 6
we'll
minutes,
try to
sorry.
wrap this up here. Okay, so what would you recommend writers can do now to prepare for writing and publications, like Kaleidoscope Magazine?
Okay, that's a great question. So, I would say the things that you want to say to the world that may never get seen behind the scenes, like your journals and stuff like that, right? The messages that you want to share with the world. Publications are great for that. Magazines, articles, blogs, stuff like that are great to reach these larger audiences. So, write for your audience, really get to know who your audience is so that you're writing for them. And also try to keep everything as brief as possible where you're still giving a little bit of a like a an interest of, I want to know more about this person. Like, don't put it all out there, especially as a neurodivergent writer. Um, we tend to be very detailed and overly, with the
Mhm,
specifics. And sometimes we can put way too much in front of the reader who is just getting to know us, just meeting us for the first time. And, we can give them too much. We can give them information overload. It can be overstimulating for them. It's not for us because of our brains and how deep they can go. But for the broad audience that could be coming across and reading it, they can get
mhm,
lost very quickly. So that's something I have been also thinking about in my own writing. My writing can be very deep and it can take a lot of time to absorb and digest. And I don't want that kind of writing to happen, where I turn my reader off,
Well,
who's coming across it. I
well,
want them to be able to absorb it and go, "Okay, this was really helpful. I got something out of
mm,
this. I learned something, but it left me wanting more. I wanna hear more from this writer. I want to start following this writer." So
mm,
so that's one of the things. The other thing I would say is get to know the publication. Read the articles that are in it. Get to know who the editor is and what they're looking for specifically so that you're not writing something that doesn't align. Because I've seen people get turned down even after being invited and they published, articles in editing and then they're like, yeah, that's not what we really wanted you to write, and then they turn them down. I've seen that happen too, with other writers, and people trying to pursue projects like that. So make sure you know who you're writing for. Don't just write for anyone. Make sure it fits, because I had to do the same thing with Shout Out Atlanta. Is this a good fit? Is this going to hinder or harm what I'm trying to say or do? Does the faith aspect, is that going to turn people off, and because it's just not what they're used to seeing in this publication? So yeah, I had to ask questions like that of the editor as well.
Yeah. Now, specifically for Kaleidoscript, I've noticed people have been brave enough to just share. I mean, I don't want to say it's all been necessarily traumatic, but it's a victory story, most of the
Hmm.
time. I think they've shared
Yeah.
something like, this is really hard, but then I came out on the other end, and this is that because of this happened, this great thing. And so how much detail do you think is needed, or should, like, if they've gone through trauma or whatever, like, how much do you think they should share? Like, I know Liberty, or not, sorry, what's Leslie Field's book, is it Forgiving Our Fathers and Mothers, I think it's called. Anyway, I grabbed hold of that because I found her, heard her on a podcast, or over the radio, actually. And so I actually read her book when it came to me processing through some healing. And she really does share some traumatic experiences. I mean, she got permission, share other people's stories, shared about her sister. But she'd met all kinds of broken people, because she was a public speaker. And so she took the opportunity to write this kind of a book. What would you say to someone who's going to write that kind of a story? Should they be brief? Because like certain details might re-traumatize, right?
Hmm. Yeah, trigger warnings. Maybe at the beginning, saying that this story has elements of graphic in nature that could be difficult for people who've been through similar trauma or sensitive, may not want to read. I mean, seriously, because
Mhm.
I've seen that happen, because you can be re-traumatized by things that you read. You can be
Mhm.
traumatized by things that you read. I think also we are in a generation right now, society that is struggling with trauma in general. So I think
Oh
it's very
yeah.
relatable of the topic right now, and that's why so many people are talking about it. But try to keep the details, the hyper details out that could cause flashbacks.
Mhm.
Um, Somebody reading it and then it triggers them in a flashback. I think that's really important. Um, you don't want that there. But you could do generalization. Like, you could say, I had a hard upbringing with my parents. Somebody did something to me in college, right? Like, you can just keep it very general, and all you need to, and then as you tell the story, it kind of fills in the details itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get the gist of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Instead
So
of putting those details
um,
out there.
yeah. Yeah. So what personal advice can you give the audience for what has worked for you when it comes to productive writing?
Okay. So I do not like overwhelm myself with a lot of writing projects all at once. I try to focus on one or two that I'm going to be all in on, instead of having a bunch at once where I'm over here and I'm over here. Like, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. And a lot of us do that. We start,
Mhm.
especially when we're starting to get attention, or people are starting to like, hey, will you be on my podcast? Will you do this? Will you do, like, I actually have very specific goals of, okay, I'm going to finish these first, and then I'm going to get these done after that, so that I don't overwhelm my brain. So I would
Mhm.
say, as another productivity tip, you do not want to put a big old list down and that be your main list that you're working off of every day. Right? You want to break those things down. You want to take, like, okay, I'm just going to take this one project. This is the one thing I'm working on, and get it done to completion, because then you'll actually be more productive rather than trying to do all these other little things, like we were talking about multitasking. Research is showing that multitasking is actually terrible for your brain. It wears your brain down. It does a lot of it over stimulates your brain, and your brain is not functioning optimally when you're multitasking rather than when you're separating. And I hate that because I'm a multitasker naturally. I love having 10 tabs open on my browser and doing a bunch of stuff and bouncing around. But I
Oh,
have noticed that when I don't do that and I focus just on one thing for a block of time, my brain is giving full power into that task. So I'm not
mm.
using only 20% of my brain or 10% of my brain on that task. My energy levels are higher to be able to get that task done. So that's also, yeah, that's something
Okay,
that
okay.
I've learned,
So,
and I'm sure it's
hey, so
new
I'm
news to
gonna
you.
I'm gonna let you life coach me here. So what about for me? Okay, so what I've noticed recently in myself taking on certain projects, or I mean, okay, so one, I write down my list for the day and I go at it, but I'm not always that organized, and some days I'm just not together, right? Like this past Monday, I was like, okay, well, no, it was about Rebekah and organizing this event, and it's like I was like, oh, I didn't get anything done. It's like, yeah, you did, but you just tried to do too much. Um, so
Yes.
what I've noticed though, one of my I would say self-sabotaging and also strengths though is with the ADHD is the hyper focus. What I've noticed is and work's been great for this because where I'm working now is they allow us to take fives. So in addition
Hmm.
to my break or 30-minute break that I'm supposed to have. So I can ideally have two 15-minute breaks along with my 30. I'm like, all right, like an hour of work, only work for 7 hours and not 8. But but so constant well frequent breaks are needed, right? But I've noticed that you know so I do need to develop some structure here. So I'll get hyper focused, and while that can be a strength, I'm hyper focused, but then I'm also tired, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to get up. And I'm just gonna keep sit here not do anything, or I'm focused on the task and I'm knocking it out, but then I'm not making food for myself, or like I didn't do that exercise routine or whatever I was supposed to do. It's like, nah, you should have took a break. And so what would you say to that for people to help be more structured?
Burning through your energy is never going to be good. It is going to always lead you to burnout. You may have heard the terminology burnout. That's what that is. You are burning through your energy way too fast. Being an introverted person, I naturally am always fighting to conserve my energy. I'm
Mm,
looking for ways to conserve my energy. Like I will give myself a good 30 minutes today to to regather my thoughts, to bring that battery level back up, because I know that if I don't, it doesn't matter how many projects have to get done or whatever deadlines there are, they will not get done because of that energy level is down. So even
mm,
providing for this, like even preparing for this, frankly, I have to make sure I'm not having too many conversations with people in the last
mm,
3 days, right? Because I knew I was going to be exerting a lot of energy having this conversation with you, which is going on an
mm.
hour and 30 minutes. I apologize for those of you who are like, man, this is taking too long. But break it up in
I'm
chunks.
trying to get
Watch
through
it in chunks
it.
because it's going to
uh,
happen. It's going to happen with these kind of conversations.
all right. um okay, so do you only work uh with people on the neurodivergent spectrum, and why should a writer or author choose you over other life coaches?
So I don't just work with people on the neurodivergent spectrum. That is my natural bend in how I think. But I think one of the really powerful things about a neurodivergent brain to a neurotypical brain is you are getting something new and fresh, maybe something you've never experienced before. You're getting somebody who's a problem solver, somebody who thinks outside of the box. And a lot of times with the neurotypical, there is a lot of natural structure and social cues and things like that, right? And you can actually miss some of the creativity side of the problem solving and the different solutions that could actually be there that you don't see. So I've had conversations with people who are neurotypical, and they're like, "Okay, like, your brain works differently, and I can see that, but it is fascinating, and it makes me think totally different, than what I normally would." So it's like a roller coaster, and getting on a roller coaster and learning all these new things that you never knew. Like, that's what we want, right? We wanna learn, we wanna learn more about ourselves, we wanna open things up inside of ourselves and really face the truth. That's the important part, is like facing the truth and being authentic, with who you are, not just who you want to be, because we can do that as well. We can mask even as a neurotypical person. We can mask as well, and a lot of people don't,
Mm.
think about that. As a neurodivergent, we know all about masking. Masking is a big old thing where we're just like, okay, we want to try to be this, right? But that's not necessarily authentic to who we are, but we can also do that when we're trying to please
Mhm.
others, when we're doing, what we're trying to look a certain way, we're trying to be a certain thing, we can do that too. So I'm all about getting to the authentic you. Who are you? And how does that translate into your writing? Are you really writing what you really want to write, or are you just writing what you think is safe?
Mm. Well, I also think, like, it can be so critical, like, with characters, like, I mean, I know that studying the personality traits or the different, uh, types are is a great way to start out, because you think, "Oh, how am I gonna create these characters?" Which I don't really much think about. I mean, I think about it in theory, but when I'm writing my characters, I don't much think about it, how, one is different from the other, but, sometimes in one character might sound too much like another, and then I think about, "Okay, so what does this character act like if they're introverted or if they're extroverted?" Right mind or left brain
Mhm.
thinker, and so,
You become
um,
a student
it
of people.
yeah, yeah,
Whether you're a
and
life coach or a writer, you're a student of people, really.
yeah, yeah, so I think, well, one exercise you could do is, I've been told, or encouraged, go sit in a restaurant and write, like, go observe people and write, you
Mhm.
could you could eavesdrop, right? But, you get to observe people.
I used to do that
But
actually.
by doing that,
I used to people
yeah,
watch
you get
a long
the
time ago.
yeah, people watch, go sit in a store or something, and that's how you become better at knowing people, right?
Mhm.
But alright, alright. Let's see, uh, let's see, okay, so what unique, qualities do you bring to your services, in the way you help people?
I kinda touched on this a little bit with the last question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
again,
but, uh,
with the
I
trauma-informed side of things, I can understand and recognize and see if there's something in your past that may be blocking you without you
mm,
even knowing it. Like, I can
mhm,
really pull I and that's something that is one of I call it a gift, but being able to pull something out of someone that they don't even see that's there, and
yeah,
really helping them see that, get that clarity that is needed. Um I do a full profile type of coaching, with anybody that I coach, because I wanna know who I'm talking to. I wanna know what you've been through, what's been your life experiences, because all that shapes to why you are struggling right now, why you're having the problems you're having right now that you're trying to overcome, why you're challenged. What are the obstacles around you that are outside of your circumstances and out of your control, and what are the things within your control? And I work with that.
mhm,
I work with what's in your control, not with what's outside of your control. And if we need support in addition, then we'll bring that in. So there really is a transformational aspect to this that I think, and I know in one of the questions, that you either asked or haven't asked yet, because I've seen the question list, is, that how am I different? I'm gonna meld these 2 questions together. There's a
okay,
lot of life coaches out there, like tons, and you can choose any life coach that you want. There's some great ones. I think the difference with me is because I've chosen, this neurodivergent niche, really seeing the need of the trauma side with the neurodivergent, and also just trying to help people heal from the things going on in this world that they're experiencing. Um, I am advocating for you. Like, I'm not just
Mhm.
collaborating with you, I am an advocate for you. I wanna see you succeed, I wanna see you do well. This isn't about, how wealthy I can get off of life coaching. I'm just gonna put it out there,
Mhm.
for me personally, that's not my focus. Um, Obviously, that is something that is with any entrepreneurship, you do have to make profit, you do have to make money, you have to be able to sustain, otherwise you're not a good business coach either. If you're saying, "Yeah, that doesn't matter." We wanna see ourselves as valuable and worth having those things, right? Um,
Mhm.
but it isn't my main focus. I'm always looking at how can I help you? What are you struggling with? Well, what can I help you overcome? Sometimes that's meant I've given them a little extra time because they
Mhm.
needed to cry in that, in that moment. And they needed to really go deep in that moment. I also bring scripture, which is very encouraging and uplifting and deep. It really gets to the heart of a person when these scriptures that maybe you never even experienced before, right? When those get read or heard, there's something powerful about it. Even if you're not a Christian, even if you don't, believe in God, like I do, I'm very sensitive to those things, faith sensitive, and also multicultural sensitive and aware. Um, that was one of the big parts in my trainings that I was doing was I really wanted to zero in on if I'm working with people around the world or people from different cultures who are in the United States because we have a lot of that going on right now. I want to be able to meet them where they're at, and understand what your culture might be behind the scenes. Um, because a lot of life coaches are not trained in multicultural training. So that was a very strong aspect as well. And that can
Mhm.
also factor into productivity, organization, et cetera, because of priorities. There might be priorities that are cultural and
Mhm.
they're not addressed right in a typical model of organization and productivity. So your family, for example, is a priority in certain cultures while maybe the work and the job is more the priority in other cultures, right? So understanding where's your priorities, where do they lie, how can we get these things to all balance out so you feel comfortable with this amount of time on this project, this amount of time at home with family, um, things like that. So, yeah, we explore
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah, so I would say what comes to my mind is that you really were able to penetrate a sense of value and order within the person, for whether it's family life or in work, um,
Mhm.
and of course with their kids, and um, so uh, yeah, so it's so important, right? Whether someone is a believer or not, that we're able to meet them where they're at, and
Mhm.
that's so powerful. I mean, I love okay, so for college, I love cultural anthropology. For some reason, I didn't do so good in the class, but I love culture. So, if you don't think that someone is, you don't understand why someone's doing it, what they're doing culturally, it's still there's still a reason behind the why they're doing what they're doing. It's not stupid. You just don't understand it, and so
Right.
like that, it's so important to be able to have that base as a setting.
Yes.
So let's see, where did we go now? Okay, well, let's see. Okay, so if the potential client listening to our broadcast thinks you'd be a great fit for them, what are some indicators for them to look for within themselves?
You want to be willing to be stretched if you're gonna work with me. Um, if you're not willing to be stretched and challenged, and even in your own belief systems, especially if you have mindsets where you're like, I'm not ever changing the way that I'm going to do things, then you're probably not ready for a coach. But if you're like,
Mm,
no, I've tried a lot of different things and it just, these things are not working. The things I've tried are not working. And I want to see a different, viewpoint, a different aspect and perspective, then you're preparing yourself for a coach. I think the other thing is recognizing that you may not always agree with what I would say. that's very possible, because we're different people and we may have different, positions on things. I've run into clients where they might be a different denomination from me. Like those of you who are Catholic versus Protestant know what that's like. But I've had wonderful times with people who are different in denomination, in culture, etc., because we learn from each other. And if you're willing to learn from another person's view or perspective and not just look to debate it, then you're going to be in a much better position to really glean something from that coaching experience.
Yeah, so I would say one of the highlights is be a lifelong learner. That's
Yes.
something that I value too. Like I've never wanted to like I grew up, in church, and it seemed to be that we couldn't typically have a certain kind of music because old
Mhm.
people want hymns or whatever, and it's like, well, um, I guess I can see. I mean, I can see their point of view in that, but culturally, I mean, every generation they tend to like a certain kind of music, right? And but to me, I'm thinking, I want to be a lifelong learner. I never want to be like, okay, I'm 60 something years old and I don't need to change anymore. I want to continue
Right.
to learn and adjust and be able to connect with really anybody, But so, um, I think we can put ourselves in our own box. um, let's see. Um, okay, if you were to die today, what is the lasting impact you would want your clients to know and remember about Scripture Prescription Ministries, the umbrella brand of your coaching services and ministries? I would include the Lady Gadget too. So, you as a
Yes,
person,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. So, I would say that I would want people to come away from working with me, and I'm not perfect, right? There's been misunderstandings, like any kind of life coach or any kind of business in general, that you're gonna run into people who may misunderstand you. You can try to work it out. You can do everything that you can do, bend over backwards, give their money back, right? Like anything that you can do to try to make that work. But I want people to come away from working with me feeling loved,
Mhm.
secure, um, that they were heard and seen, while I was here and working with them, or my ministry was something on the earth, and hopefully there's a legacy there. Hopefully, passes on, and I can pass it down to someone, and it keeps going and blessing people. I want people to see Jesus. I want people to see Jesus tangibly through my life. I don't. Rather than it just being a message of, here's Jesus and he loves you, and, you know, read the Bible and pray and go to church and all that, right? Those are all great things, and those are all things in spiritual practices. Um, but when it comes to your life purpose, when it comes to who you are, how you were designed, really understanding yourself, like getting a eureka moment of, oh, wow, I'm not just here just to exist. I'm here because there's a God who loves me. And here is a tangible way that I can see that love through a person, right? Not, Jesus is not here in person. We can't talk to him, but like we are ambassadors for him. And a lot of believers have a hard time connecting those two things together, right? To where I represent him. I'm here representing him. So I want people to see Scripture Prescriptions Ministries as, you know, Rebekah was a vessel that God chose to help represent who Jesus is in all different aspects. That I felt loved and I felt inspired. Um, and I know what my worth and my value is now because of that ministry.
Yeah, there's something about I would say with for as we were preparing for this, I started out as the guy who didn't know himself, who wasn't confident, doesn't believe in himself, to being that person that's confident, which I'm still working on that. But the way that's affecting my writing is
Mhm.
a lot of my characters. they didn't know themselves. I noticed I'm like, oh, there's that character. They're looking for their dad, or that they got
Yeah.
an abandonment issue or whatever. And so now I can see both sides because every story needs a conflict, which is preferably your own character has that certain flaw, right? What's wrong? And so I
Mhm.
can write my character now. I realized that there's the broken character who doesn't have the father, but then I can write him in a confident light, at the end, which is needed for closure of,
Mhm.
well, any story really, because a character transforms themselves throughout the narrative, and
Right.
well, through what they go through, and it'd be pretty bland to just have it the text down on paper, at the end of the book, and not really being able to embody it, And so the fact that I've gone through what I've gone through and had those experiences, like Rebecca was saying about, even with what she's gone through, how it's impacted her writing. I've seen how it's impacted mine. So that's why I think that, uh, taking Rebecca's offer here, to as a life coach to help you with not just be productive in your writing, but to go through that narrative of your own life to get healing, to process through in any of those areas where you're struggling. If you need help when you're focusing, getting organized, I think she's your girl.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and I
I
appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audiences as well, and just to get a chance to meet some new people out there, and, just really get to show who I am as a person, because you can get behind a screen, you can see pictures, you can see writing, and then not know that person, you know? So
yeah,
this has
yeah.
been a great opportunity for people to really get to know me, to see me as a person, and the person you see now is who you will see when you're in a coaching appointment with me, but it will also have accountability and structure, and, if you want somebody who's gonna, keep you on task, that would be me, right? Like, I'm not gonna shy away from going, "Did you get this done this week? I know this was a goal we're working on. How are you doing? Where's the follow-up on that?" Right? Like, it's gonna really help you move the needle forward, and not just say you're moving the needle forward, right? Because we can do that
Mhm.
too. We can, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing great," and then you just know down deep inside, "Oh my gosh, I'm just failing." I'm failing at life, which I actually have a different perspective on failure as well, so
Yeah.
which I
So
talk about in coaching.
So as we conclude with the interview here, how are some different ways that they'll be able to access this replay? And then I have the Neurodivergent Authors and Writers Facebook group that I just created. It's exclusive for the neurodivergent. I guess if you want to be a part, you're not. If you want to check it out, that's great too. But I want to create that environment for the neurodivergent, to be specifically to help them in multiple areas. You can check it out. I'm not listing all the details of what it includes, but uh, I mean, a lot of it comes from not just from my own experience, but I've met with other people who claim to have ADHD, and so I want to work with them, and I've just found a host of just awesome people that I think will really be able to benefit and help me with this group. Um, so yeah, and something else I would like to just end on is I asked my mom. My mom is like my hero when it comes to me succeeding in my dyslexia and all the complications. I had severe dyslexia, and I've asked her to do an interview with me. I sat down with her before I ever went to college, and I wrote like a narrative, from beginning to end, what I went through. But I'd really like to sit down with her and kind of make it more real and like just have a separate interview with her. I don't know if I'll be live or not. I think she might want to be pre-recorded because she's like, "Well, we'll have to practice." When I asked her, but I think that'd be a great testimony on my end. You get to know me more. See what I went through, what worked, and then that I can do like a separate video even after that. Where I can talk about, well, just my story. Okay, so how did I embrace my writing journey? From that point forward, into, well, I would say 2012 onward, because it was really it's college that pushed me, I kept writing, you gotta do all this writing, and it pushed me to discover that part of myself. And if it wasn't for college, I might not have pushed me in that direction.
So I just put a banner
So
up there. So if anybody watching this wants to jot this down, SP Ministries at RebekahJosanne.com. That is the best way right now to just email me because I have that set up specifically for the ministry. You'll be able to correspond with me. I can ask questions, things like that. I would give you a page, but my page is more geared towards another type of offer that I give, and I haven't had the time yet to put a page up, but eventually I will. I'll have like a page specifically for this type of an offer with productivity and organization and focus coaching, but also the narrative identity, like what you said, identity coaching as well that is involved in that. And then down in the description, I have put some links as well. So you can go to Kaleidoscript magazine to be able to sign up for that because that's Ian's baby project, which I love. I love seeing him go after that. And then also, I think down and below, I also put the Facebook groups, Ian's Facebook groups in there as well. And then you're going to see all my contact information as well down below. There's all kinds of different links in there, and I'll double check those and make sure those are good. You can go to Rebekah Josanne on Facebook to find me as well. I am in the groups. I'm pretty sure I'm in both your groups, right?
yeah,
In Writing
you
Tips
did
for
recently join
Writers.
the other one.
Yep, Writing Tips for Writers and the Neurodivergent group. So if you want to find me in the members list, you can do that as well. It'll say Rebekah Josanne. And yeah, I hope to get to talk with you guys, and thank you so much for having me. I know this is on my channel, which just made it easier, but thanks for having me in the communities that Ian has invited me to. So is there anything else that you
Yeah.
wanted to know from me, or?
Oh, oh no, I don't think so. Just
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much for creating this opportunity. It was amazing. So
Yeah, this
I
is
hope
great, a great
if
discussion.
our audience has any questions or anything, I would say don't be afraid to direct message me, or if you want to message Kaleidoscript magazine, I guess that'd be great too. Melissa will be letting me know you messaged me.
Yes, and you're welcome
But
to message me as well. It might take me a little bit to get to the messages, but if you email me, then you're gonna hear from me a quicker response.
so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for bearing with this hour and 41 minute. Hopefully, this is packed with value for you, and you really enjoyed it. Awesome. All right. Have a great
All
day.
right, bye.
Bye.